This lesson is on finding slope from an equation. So first off, we've got slope-intercept form. Consider a random line with slope m, and it passes through a y-intercept, which a y-intercept will always have x value 0, and we're just going to call it b for whatever point this is. And then it's also got a random point xy somewhere on the line, which could be anywhere. So let's look at the slope formula, and recall the slope formula was the y difference over the x difference. So in this case that would be y minus b over x minus 0. What is that? Well, that's m equals y minus b over x. That's all we can do with it. We can also multiply both sides by x to remove the denominator, and then we have mx equals y minus b. And let's just solve for y, and then we have mx plus b because we added b to both sides. So this is something you may have seen before, y equals mx plus b. But this quick little proof here shows you that m indeed is the slope, and b indeed is the y-intercept. So what's the slope in these equations? Well, these are already in the format that we just discussed. So the coefficient of the x is actually, by definition, the slope. If y is on its own, then in this case the slope is 1/2. What's the y-intercept? Well, the y-intercept is 0, 1. So notice you could actually graph that and say, well, I know it starts at 0, 1, and it travels up 1 over 2. Up 1 over 2 because rise over run. And you can actually graph your equation like this. But this will be covered a little bit later. So let's just focus on identifying the slope here. So what's the slope in this equation? Well, the same thing here. Coefficient of x is -3/4. So the slope is -3/4. What's the y-intercept? Well, the y-intercept is kind of like a +0 there, so that's a 0, 0. So this equation goes through 0, 0 and travels, and this negative can be either in the numerator or the denominator, but not both. So you could see it as traveling down 3 over 4, or you could see it as traveling up 3, left 4. Notice that it is still on the same line. What about standard form? Well, standard form is when it's not solved for y, and it's just in general like that. So here's an example of an equation written in standard form. It's not in slope-intercept form. So the question is, what is the slope? Well, you could find some points and then use the slope formula to find the slope. But you could also put it into the slope-intercept form, and then you can also identify the slope. To do this, we want to solve for y. To solve for y, we first subtract 5x from both sides. We get 2y equals -5x plus 10. Now we can divide everything by 2, and we get y equals -5/2 x plus 5. Again, the coefficient of x when solved for y is the slope. So our slope is -5/2, meaning down 5, right 2. In this case, our y-intercept is at 5, meaning at 0 for x, you have 5 for your y. Because we know that point exists, we can start there and we can travel down 5, right 2. Down 5, right 2. And there's the line.